Hey guys, this is Solution PODFIC, and today we're going to be reading The Heir to Stark Industries by Only Forward. This is Chapter 2. Winter break passed, and so did the next 2 months. Peter found himself swarmed with work, both from Midtown and from the Stark Industries. So he never got time to tour the building properly and meet all the employees that he had promised himself he would do. Pepper had recovered from her surgery quickly and had returned to work. The new launch of the smartphones had gone well, and the drone bundle had also been successful. Stocks were higher than ever. Peter was happy with all the interns, their projects, and their progress. He had been able to assist them in getting several inventions created and put into the world, with his name attached to them as a result of his help. Peter was technically a scientist. He'd actually invented things that helped people. The second time the youngboss protocol was implemented, Peter had been in a calculus lesson, chewing on a pencil and staring at an exam paper he had completed 30 minutes ago. He was doodling on the back in an attempt to figure out the equation that had caused a halt in the plans for the new household helping robot that SI was producing. If he just thought about it some more, he could definitely figure it out. He was in the middle of thinking about the equation when his phone vibrated in his jeans pocket. Not just once, but 3 times. Peter wasn't supposed to look at his phone during tests. Obviously. One of the basic rules of school, and Tony had made him promise he wouldn't slack on his schoolwork in order to respond to messages from the company. But needs must. Anyways, he was done with the paper, and the equation wasn't going to be solved when he was distracted. He snuck the phone out of his pocket and saw that the beep had come from Friday. The youngboss protocol had been activated again. There was a missed call from Tony, and a text from 2 minutes ago that read, "Sorry kid, give me a ring when you can." Tony had recently gone under with a bad chest infection, and the Avengers medical team led by Helen Cho had put him on bed rest until it was fixed, which Pepper had enforced with a stern warning. She was in Japan, trying to sort out the details for the newest branch of Stark Industries, due to be built in Tokyo. She was talking with contractors and the like, and had decided it was easier if she was in Japan. Any meetings she had organized had been postponed until later, but she was still capable of running the other branches of SI whilst in Japan. Peter had told her very explicitly that he was around and would be going to the New York branch every evening just to check up on the place, which he had been doing for the last several days. Tony privately thought it was very funny that Peter was acting like the trainee CEO, even though he didn't know he was the heir yet. Peter was just great like that. He quietly cursed to himself and then put his hand up. Peter really didn't like drawing attention to himself. Not at Midtown, but he had to go. It was an emergency. He had to find out what had happened to Pepper, and then get to work. It took an excruciatingly long 30 seconds before Mr. Harrington noticed him. "Can I please be excused?" he asked. Mr. Harrington frowned. "What about your test?" It took all Peter had not to roll his eyes. The test was embarrassingly easy for a senior who specialized in science and engineering specifically. It hadn't even touched the surface of the equations he dealt with on the daily with the interns. Peter went to college lectures at MIT in his spare time. The test wasn't challenging. "I finished it." He handed the paper to Mr. Harrington, who raised his eyebrows in disbelief. He still had 45 minutes left to complete the exam. Even Peter, the resident science genius at Midtown, could not possibly complete a test so quickly. It was supposed to be difficult, one of the most difficult ones from the whole curriculum. But Peter knew he wouldn't flunk. He ran through the corridors to the doors and didn't bother signing out of the school. Presumably someone from SI, probably Ava, Pepper's assistant, would inform them of his absence. He had to get to Stark Industries. There was no time to dawdle. Mr. Stark picked up the phone when he rang. He sounded rough, but started apologizing immediately. "Kid, look, you can go back to school." Tony tried to put cheer into his voice, but it ended up just turning into a heavy cough. The doctors were worried that this chest infection might cause further issues for his chest and internal organs, which of course needed to be looked after that time Tony was literally fatally stabbed with shrapnel from his own missile. "Friday betrayed me and sent you, but I can handle this. All I have is just a little cough." "What happened to Pepper?" Peter ignored Tony. Of course Tony wasn't going to be able to run Stark Industries, not in his bedridden state. The wrath of Pepper Potts simply wasn't worth it. "Earthquake in Tokyo. She's perfectly fine and uninjured, but they're on lockdown. Several buildings were damaged. Pep won't be able to run any of the other locations for today. But Pete, I've got this." Tony paused to cough again, this time sounding like a dying animal. "Go back to school. Smash that physics test." I did smash it. Just finished it, actually. Walked out early, and we both know you can't run the company with a cough like that. Pepper would kill you. I've got this. You trust me, right? "I do trust you, but I don't want May to come after me for ruining your education." "You're not. I didn't even have anything important on for the rest of the day. I'm just wasting my time." At work, I can actually do some important stuff. This is the whole reason for the Young Boss protocol anyways. Well, only if you're sure. I did say emergencies. This isn't really one. I'm still talking and breathing. Peter rolled his eyes. Tony was so dramatic. Thinking he can take care of the company while seriously ill? Jeez. Peter had offered and everything. Stay in bed. I'll call you if I need anything. Tony let out a sigh of relief. Thanks, kid. You're a star. Tony hung up and Peter waited for Happy outside the school gate. He never brought the Spider-Man suit to school, so he couldn't swing to the tower, hence the need for a pickup by Happy. But going straight from school did mean he was going to turn up to SI dressed in a geeky science top and jeans, but hey. Tony had bought him a range of fancy suits after seeing Peter in the one he'd gotten from his favorite tailor for the first time the Young Boss protocol was activated, and Peter kept them in his office at Stark Industries, which was essentially a storage room that Tony gave him just to shove all of his extra stuff in. It didn't have to be tidy, and it wasn't, but he did at least have a desk. Peter scrolled through the calendar app on his phone. He and Tony had coded it so that whenever the Young Boss protocol was activated, Pepper and Tony's calendars synced to his phone so he could see what meetings they'd had planned. But of course, because of Tony's sudden illness, and Pepper's escapade to Japan, any face-to-face meetings had been postponed and arranged for further days. So, for the first time in Stark Industries' history, probably, he pretty much had a free day. Peter would really just be there to fix problems that arose, but that was boring, and he was feeling in the mood for chaos. He could just slink up to the labs and play with some new web fluid for a few hours, but he might as well be in school. No, this was a good opportunity to do what he'd been meaning to do ever since the Young Boss protocol had been activated for the first time. Actually get to touch with all the employees, make meaningful change. He knew the interns like the back of his hand, but for the most of the other departments, he'd only been in contact with them briefly, and even then, it was mainly the heads of the department rather than the lower-level employees. Peter was leading the whole company, and he didn't know half the people he was leading. Stark Industries was split into mainly 7 departments within the tower, all working together. They also hired contractors and other companies for manufacturing, but they all worked off-site. The main 6 departments on-site were research and development, legal, public relations, marketing and finance, human resources, assembly and production, and last but not least, security and maintenance. He figured if he started at the bottom of the tower, he could spawn around in every floor of the tower and solve the problems when he arrived at them. Happy picked him up without complaint, handing him his badge as he did so. After Peter had complained to Happy about Colonel Williamson, Happy had made a special one for him titled Peter Parker, Acting CEO, so people would stop undermining his authority. Peter hated it. Tony had laughed very hard when Happy showed him. They chatted about the earthquake in Tokyo and Tony's minor illness with minor tones of worry. Happy asked about how his physics test went, small talk to pass the time before they appeared at Stark Tower. Peter asked about the security department and the people who worked there. Happy very fondly discussed all of his employees, and Peter promised that he'd be around to say hello at some point throughout the day. He started by signing in at the front desk. Peter had fond memories with the people who worked at the front desk. They rotated, of course, but Peter had been to Stark Tower so many times over the years that he knew pretty much all of them. That day it was Will, who was chatted to for a bit, making sure everything was alright. No grievances, other than people being people. Will directed him into an office on the first floor, where it turned out Friday had delivered his suit, so he didn't have to start the day wearing the casual wear he was wearing. He attached his little acting CEO badge to the lapel of the suit with a grimace, and then so began the tour. The first floors were the home of the IT department and security and maintenance department. These guys kept the building going, and Peter had only really been down to visit them when he had a question for Happy. That needed correcting, hence the presence. In IT, Peter met up with Dawn, the whiz at all things computer-related. Dawn taught him about all the computers they used to run the building, and all of the operating systems, including the backup ones in case he ever needed them. Some of the particularly cool features on the computers, which had been created or adapted especially for Stark Industries' use, he sent pictures of to Ned. His guy in the chair would be far more interested in the computers than he was. Peter knew enough about code to get by, but he was far more interested in the science element of it. The area of computers Peter specialized in was all the coding necessary for his suits. The Iron Man suits, robots, and AI systems. Anything beyond that, and Peter got somewhat lost. However, it was Ned's specialty, so Peter knew for certain his best friend would love it. He was right. Ned. Dude. Ned. That tech is sick. Ned. Where the fuck are you? Peter. Stark Industries IT department. Peter. You have to come visit, dude. It's so sick. You'd love it. Ned. Exclamation, exclamation, exclamation mark. Ned, young boss protocol again? Ned, that physics test was awful. I can't believe you finished so early. Peter explained the situation briefly to Ned, who complained a bit about being alone for the rest of the day, but wished him good luck. Peter did hate abandoning Ned at school, especially as it meant he would miss out on seeing MJ for the day. Well, they were beginning to get close. Platonically, though. It was difficult to get romantically close to someone in a trio friendship, but sometimes she looked at him, and it felt like they were communicating silently. Ever since she became captain of the decathlon team anyways. Maybe that was MJ's idea of friendship. He wandered around with Dawn, asking him if he ever had any problems with Stark Industries or any employees or anything. Nah, Dawn shook his head. The IT team are pretty close. We've never had any problems here. Everyone is pretty much the same. I know there have been issues in other departments, though. Where? Peter asked, determined to pay them a visit. He had the time, after all. Public relations has been fraught with troubles recently. I don't know quite what happened, but ever since the new deputy for their department was hired, there had been more and more problems, Dawn explained. Well, thank you for your time. I'll let you get back to work. It was a pleasure, boss. See you around? Of course, Peter nodded, having a final glance around the department. When he strolled into security and maintenance, Happy welcomed him with open arms and introduced him to all of the employees. It turned out these guys were a close bunch as well, and had no problems either. Apparently all of them reported any problems to Happy, and as Happy had the balls to actually speak up to either Tony or Pepper, any issues they had were sorted reasonably quickly. Being the head of security with a personal connection to the big boss was helpful like that. Happy's main complaint was that Peter's badge wasn't on proper display, as Peter didn't actually like wearing the blazer all that much. When he could, he would carry the blazer instead of wearing it, leaving him simply wearing a white shirt with no badge. Besides, the suit jacket didn't seem to agree with the badge being pinned onto it. He'd lost 3 of his Peter Parker Intern Director badges in the last 2 weeks because of the suit dislodging them somehow. It was like the expensive fabric just rejected the intrusion. Next, he moved on to the floors up a couple of levels, which contained human resources and public relations. Peter wandered into the human resources department and stopped off at people's various desks, checking up on them. These guys dealt with hiring new employees, interns, and mainly dealing with problems the employees had, especially if they had problems with other employees. I wonder, Peter paused, who's in charge of managing the hires and problems for public relations? Oh, Kai, I think. One of the employees pointed him out. And Peter wandered over, glancing at people's computers and some files on the way. Kai noticed him approaching and stood up from his desk. Mr. Parker, Kai nodded, holding out a hand for him to shake. Peter had found that the employees who hadn't met him before often liked to shake his hand. He probably needed to work on giving a stronger handshake, sign of authority and whatnot. Just Peter, please. I've heard your name is Kai, and you hire all of the employees for Public Relations Department, Peter queried. I do indeed. That's my role here, Kai confirmed. Have there been any recent problems with PR recently? I've heard whispers. Peter wasn't going to rat out his source. Well, I don't like to talk bad of any of the employees here, but yes, there has been a recent influx of problems from there, more so than any department. Peter fidgeted with his fingers. What is it in reference to, do you know? Well, Kai winced. About 2 months ago, I hired this deputy director to support Mrs. Roberts, the head of the PR department. Jamie Andrews, spotless CV, perfectly lovely attitude. Seemed like a team player. But ever since she arrived, there's been multiple complaints about her. I don't quite know why. Anytime I send someone up to investigate, they say Jamie is perfectly pleasant. Okay, thank you. I'll have to pay them a visit later on. Peter paused. Do you have any problems with yourself, Kai? With anything Stark Industries does? No, I don't think so. Just the problems about PR. Thanks for asking, though. Kai nodded at him. Not a problem. Lovely to meet you. Peter waved as he walked off, doing a little dance with his feet. The whole issue with Jamie sounded like something that needed to be investigated. Peter visited several more employees for HR before encountering the personal hiring interns. Stark Industries regularly hired new interns from all walks of life, but Peter felt they needed to appeal early on. Let people know about the scheme. Peter asked the employees what she thought about the idea. An intern fair, maybe? Show them what we do. She posed, tapping her pen on the desk. An intern fair, maybe? Show them what we do. She posed, tapping her pen on the desk. You're right. That's actually such a cool idea, Peter told the employee. We could host it here in one of the halls on the first floor. They kept several large rooms for press conferences and release dates. We could get the interns to demo projects and talk about their experiences here, and encourage more applicants. It would be aimed at high schoolers. I know I would have benefited from doing something like that. I still would if I didn't work here already. Most of my classmates would be really interested in something like that. I go to a science school, you see. Oh, that's cool, the employee mumbled. Okay, I'll draw up some plans with a date, but we have to run it by the manager. It's okay, Peter pointed at his badge. You don't need to check with anyone. The employee's eyes widened in shock, and she started fidgeting with her pen nervously. Oh, Mr. Parker, I'm so sorry, I didn't recognize you. Don't even worry about it. We haven't met before, that's on me. I'm going to talk to your boss now, but this is your project, okay? Yours. Liaison with me when we have more details, yeah? My email is in the system, you've got it. Peter grinned at her. Thank you. She smiled a little bit. Peter nodded his head, wandered off to go and speak to the manager of HR. Gosh, this is so much more productive than doing random meetings with the board. He was actually solving problems, doing things, learning more about the company. And he was only just getting started. Whoa, that felt good. Hopefully Pepper didn't mind the stuff he was doing. An intern fair was probably something he should get confirmation for, but hell, he was the CEO for the day. After human resources, the natural progression of the tour meant he ended up at public relations. He was anticipating some drama, not even because of the problems he'd learned. It was just that whenever he'd met with Mrs. Roberts, head of the department, he'd been insulted with the details about his own publicity campaign. There was nothing wrong with having his own publicity campaign, except that he didn't have one, or need one. He was just an intern director who was sometimes the CEO. There'd be nothing to announce. Stark Industries announced to every employee they hired they would never stop doing press conferences. Mrs. Roberts had been very persistent, though. It was for that reason he mainly avoided PR. Tony had confessed to him that he also tended to avoid the PR department because they constantly wanted to talk about Tony's media image and covering up stories about his past. Tony said he didn't care. He'd made mistakes, and he wasn't planning on hiding them. Peter took much the same attitude. As long as he could keep Spider-Man private, any big mistakes he made as Peter Parker should be public. But in order to find out the truth about Mrs. Roberts' problem-causing employee Jamie, he had to actually talk to Mrs. Roberts. So Peter decided to be brave and just knock on a door. Mrs. Roberts seemed stressed, but she brightened up when she saw Peter. Mr. Parker, lovely to see you. And you, of course. Peter nodded. Problems? Oh, just continued issues. I'm sure you know about the leaks we've been having recently. Peter did. Pepper had been extremely stressed about it 2 weeks ago. Release dates of products, and even details of these projects kept getting released to the media. It was a major problem. But Peter hasn't seen how he could possibly resolve it unless he interviewed every single employee. And that seemed like a waste of time. Do you have any ideas on the source yet? Any people you need me to interrogate? Peter was being serious, but Mrs. Roberts chuckled. How about everyone? There's too many people to even start limiting it down. Most of the departments handle stages of the projects that keep getting leaked, and employees talk with each other anyways. Peter winced. How about everyone down here? Mrs. Roberts sighed. I don't want to think about it. I prefer to trust my employees, Peter. Yes, here was a nice segue into the new topic. I heard you have a new second in command. How is Miss Andrews? Ruthless, but that's good. She doesn't like to talk to people overly, but she gets her job done, and that's what I need right now. Okay, Roberts wasn't going to insult anyone no matter how brutal Peter got. And he really didn't want to get interrogative. It was best to keep the heads of the department on his side. Perfect. Well, I'll leave you to get on, but best of luck with the issues. Mrs. Roberts turned to him. Wait, Mr. Parker, we need to discuss your public image and your social media Peter was on the move and fast. See you soon, Mrs. Roberts. He swung out of the office and shut the door behind him. Now really, all Peter wanted to do was get the hell out of the PR. So he wouldn't have to watch as someone combed through his social media profiles. He wasn't an idiot. He hardly posted anything on social media. Nothing stupid anyways. Anything else he posted was on an anonymous account. Very anonymous. Without his face. Also, he was logged into the Spider-Man social media accounts on his phone, and it could all go extremely wrong very quickly. If random people from Stark Industries found out about him being Spider-Man, it would be a mess of NDAs and far too much paperwork. But he feared he wouldn't be able to escape Mrs. Roberts fast enough if he tried to run out of the department now. So he tried to take Kai's approach and investigate this mystery employee causing complaints, Jamie Andrews. She had her own office, which was right next to Mrs. Andrews. As the deputy head of the department, he knocked and a voice called for him to let himself in. Peter entered and caught sight of her for the first time. Jamie was a blonde lady, probably about 30, extremely pretty in a very perfect way. Makeup done to perfection, not a hair out of place. She smiled at him and he relaxed. Okay, maybe Kai had over-exaggerated. There was no way she could be that bad. Mr. Roberts had been kind about her at least. He should at least start with a good feeling about the conversation rather than an immediate sense of impending doom. "Hi," Peter said, slightly awkward. He didn't really know how to have this chat. "Hey, Jamie, I've heard you're a right pain in the ass. Mind telling me why?" Maybe he should have talked to some of the other employees before this. Being warned about someone before he even met them apparently made him extremely uncomfortable. "I'm Jamie Andrews. You're Peter Parker." Peter nodded. "That's me." Peter could immediately see the iciness that Mrs. Roberts had been trying to describe when she talked about Jamie. The woman was cold. "You're the intern director everyone talks about all the time." Peter raised an eyebrow. "All the time?" "Oh, well, I doubt that. I'm just Peter," he shrugged. "What's that your badge says? Acting CEO?" "Yeah, Peter and Tony can't be in charge today, so I'm here. I step in when they can't, basically." Jamie smiled at that. "I'm doing a tour of the building today. I was just wondering, do you, have any problems with Stark Industries?" It was kind of messing up all of his words. But fuck it. "No problems at all," Jamie said. She had some kind of accident, but he couldn't place it. That was the kind of thing that unreasonably bugged Peter. Like, he knew unconsciously where it was from, but he couldn't place why. "So you're settled in? Understanding your role? I know you're new to the position, so I was wondering if you had any inquiries." "I'm perfectly comfortable where I am. Thank you, Mr. Parker." It was almost a drawl, her tone. Like it was covered with a thick layer of sarcasm or something. "Okay, great. Well, I'll leave you to get on, but please do feel free to check in if you need anything." She was a bit cold, not very emotional. Not the most pleasant person to be around, but otherwise okay. Maybe people didn't think she was working well with the team, but that didn't mean she couldn't do her job. Peter couldn't fight her for being antisocial. So he left her office, feeling a bit confused, and decided to talk to some of the other employees. He made it to someone's desk and started a conversation with them when he heard something coming from the inside of the office he just left. It was a ringtone. Jamie was calling someone. Peter didn't like using his superhearing for stuff like that, not civilian stuff. It felt fair when it was for Spider-Man, but in his actual life, it had just made him able to hear a lot of conversations he just wasn't supposed to hear. He had heard a lot of insults secondhand, not even said to his face. It felt like an invasion of privacy, especially when he was at work. Confidential business was supposed to remain confidential, but apparently his spider senses disagreed. Apparently this was important, and he needed to know. If his senses thought something was wrong, it probably was. He had learned to trust the senses. So Peter excused himself from the conversation he just engaged in and retreated to the wall next to Jamie's office, probably looking extremely weird in the process of doing so. "Marcus, you're going to love this." Jamie's voice was loud and clear to Peter. Even through the wall, who was Marcus? He glanced around the PR department. No one had just picked up their phone in the last minute. Someone external then. "I just spoke to Peter Parker. He's the new CEO of Stark Industries, and get this." That was simply a lie. Peter was standing in as the CEO, and he'd made that fairly clear to Jamie. "What, Alex?" came the faint voice from the phone. It was faint, but Peter knew he'd heard the words correctly. Peter felt a shiver go up his spine. Jamie, who apparently wasn't Jamie, but in fact Alex, began to explain her interaction with Peter. "He's like 16, Marcus. This is Stark's kid. I don't care if he has some other surname. It's a joke. That kid is the new CEO. And he's learning the ropes as we speak. They trust him with the company when they're away. He's their kid." Peter bit his lip. The situation was shady at best. Who was Marcus? Stark and Potts haven't been together that long. Marcus was right. Jamie's theory made absolutely zero sense. There was no way Peter could be Tony's kid. And what was the point in lying? "No, I know, Marcus. That doesn't matter. The details don't matter. We know Stark slept around. This is what we need to take him down. He had an illegitimate child who was probably abandoned for years and then kept secret. Now he's training the kid to take his place as CEO? Peter clenched his jaw, half a mind to smash through the door and throttle her for insulting Tony. That was not what happened, not at all. Peter wasn't even his kid. "I don't understand how this will help." Marcus, the voice of reason clearly, "will paint Tony as the guy who abandoned his son. How can we, the U.S. public and the government, trust a man like that with a suit like Iron Man, with protecting the world, if he can't even protect his own son?" Okay, so they clearly have some kind of personal vendetta against Tony, and they're planning on exposing him somehow? That's a legitimate problem. Peter grabbed his phone out of his pocket and texted Happy. "Peter, I think I'm going to need your help in a minute." Happy, "Where?" Peter, "Public relations." Happy, "Please don't make me go there." Peter, "Important, come quick." Happy, "I'll be there in 5 minutes. Keep me posted." Alex, you're a genius. Write the story. We'll have it published for Monday's papers. A little bit of research on this kid and we can make it perfect. Okay, Marcus was no longer the voice of reason. Seriously? He heard a story littered with lies and immediately decided to dox a child? Wow, Marcus. Wow. Marcus, can I come back to the daily media now? Shit. So Jamie's work at Stark was all just to find something to expose Tony with? Had she also been the source of the leaks? It would make sense, and the timeline would fit. The leaks about the products had started a couple of months ago. Of course, Alex. Hand in your notice. Your work at Stark Industries is done. The call ended, and Peter gave it 10 seconds before he opened the door, closing it behind him. He wanted to do this steadily. Alex, turned to stare at him with alarmed eyes, then settled her jaw. So, Alex said, how much of that did you hear? Alex? Peter held out his hands, a peaceful move. I know who you are now, and let's just talk about this. What is there to talk about? I've got everything I need, anyways. I don't need to stay here any longer. Alex paced behind her desk. Please don't do this. It won't hurt the company as much as you think. It won't even hurt Tony. He's had many people bash at his reputation. I have lawyers that can prove that everything you just said to, who was it, Marcus? Are not true. We will sue you and the daily media for defamation of character. It was true. The Stark legal team had drafted a lot of lawsuits on Tony's behalf, and the team wouldn't hesitate to do another one. The story's getting out, Peter. I can give them a nice article about your little job when you're playing CEO every so often when your parents have emergencies. Tony Stark treats you like family. I think the media would very much appreciate someone giving them a tell-all about their Stark child. You have to know I'm not actually his son, Peter established. Doesn't matter, Alex shrugged. You look alike, you act alike. We'll make proof, and they'll believe me anyways. People believe anything they read. I can see it now. Exposé on Tony Stark and his appalling attempt at being a parent. Okay, so she fucked up. Peter wouldn't stand for someone insulting Tony's parenting skills. No way. Not with how amazingly Tony had treated him over the past couple of years. Tony Stark would be a great father. I don't know why you hate him so much, but I assure you, you don't have to do this, you know. We can talk, arrange something, a deal. It doesn't have to get ugly. I really don't want to make a lawsuit for this. Please, Alex. He really would prefer to just sort it out, get to the root of the issue. The last thing he wanted to do was spend hours in a room talking to lawyers. It's too late, Peter. I'm never going to side with Tony Stark or his company. He was fed up. Alex was clearly not going to explain any of your motives. I'm doing this quietly because I don't want to confront you in front of all your colleagues, and I think we should keep this on the down low, but you will be punished for this, I promise you. Peter hissed at her, but was interrupted. No, I won't be. You're going to let me walk out of this door. That startled him, but he'd take the bait. Oh, and why is that? Alex pulled out a gun, aimed at Peter's head. Well, he's had enough guns pointed at his head that his heart doesn't really race anymore, but still, it was the whole principle of the matter. A little extreme, he thought, to pull a gun for this. A gun? Peter said dryly. Oh no, I'm so scared. Peter shot webs at her gun and stuck it to the wall. He kept the web shooters on at all times, hidden even under his business suit. And good thing he did, too. You never did know when you would need some webs. He was pretty sure that the office doors weren't bulletproof. No matter how Stark Tower was built, there was no way they had budget for bulletproof doors. Someone could have been seriously injured. He could have been seriously injured. If he had got shot, Tony actually would have had a heart attack. Besides, then who would be left to run Stark Industries? Pepper in Japan, Tony bedridden, and Peter shot? No, it had been best to de-arm her as quick as possible. What? How do you have those? Alex seemed too stunned to actually worry about the gun having been taken away from her, probably still scooping for another story. A little gift from Spider-Man. I make all his texts and webs for him, you see. So he keeps me equipped. Peter doesn't like to lie, but hey, he can't have this woman going around telling everyone he's Spider-Man. It was dangerous to even use the webs, exposing himself like that. It wasn't too unreliable that he would know Spider-Man, so at least there is a solid link. After all, it had been widely established that Spider-Man knew Tony from the missions they'd been on together, and all the times Spider-Man had been sighted climbing the walls of Stark Tower. Peter works for Tony, obviously. It wasn't too far a stretch. Peter webbed Alex to the wall, too, and turned to the door, opening it. Happy, rather conveniently, was standing in the doorway. He assessed the situation extremely quickly. What is going on here? Happy was horrified. He turned to Peter and whispered, Peter, tell me that isn't a person and a gun stuck to the wall with webs. Rather unfortunately, the entire public relations team were crowding around as well, and could quite easily see into the office. It is a gun. This is Alex. Peter gestured to Alex like he was a leading auction, who Stark Industries knows as Jamie Andrews. She just tried to shoot me in the head, and she's actually a journalist who works for the newspaper called the Daily Media. She has been working here for 2 months to try and expose Stark Industries, and Tony in particular. Her boss just decided to do an expose on Tony and me. Happy looked like he was going to kill someone, preferably Alex. Right, Happy said, nodding, as though he couldn't process it, but was accepting it anyways. And you just found this out. Because of course he did. Happy, Peter gestured to the woman, whispering, I think she needs an escort to, The police station. Yes, right. I can do that. Happy unstuck her from the wall, restraining her with another of his employees down in security, before they took her out of the public relations department for good. Peter pulled the head of security aside. Please don't tell Tony about this. The last thing Peter wanted to do was cause extra stress for his boss. But that wasn't the only issue. Happy had been dating his Aunt May for several months now, so he had to cover that off. And May, don't tell May, I'll tell her. But she'll freak out if she hears it from you. Happy frowned. It was probably the opposite of his job description, hiding information like this. He'd been Tony's bodyguard for years, so it went against his instincts to not tell the man of any possible threat, even if Tony wouldn't take it seriously if the threat was against himself. But if Tony had found out that he'd nearly been killed, it would be bad for his illness, and bad for young boss protocol, which would probably be suspended until further notice. He wanted to avoid that at all cost. Please, Happy, Tony's ill, Peter pleaded, and it worked. Happy nodded with a resigned expression, clearly unhappy. Fine, but you better tell them, both of them. Peter let out a breath. That was one problem sorted. Happy wouldn't tell. But it did mean that he had to tell them, and that always went well. After that one time he had been stabbed, lightly, as Spider-Man on one patrol evening, Tony had Karen report any injuries, however minor. Tony would send him a text literally about the smallest bruise Peter had ever seen, often after it had already happened. Geez, it was like the man forgot he had advanced healing as a part of his powers. That stabbing incident had made Tony become much more cautious with Peter, adding at least a dozen new protective protocols to the suit every time he saw them. He didn't want that to happen again. Peter decided not to tell Tony about this until it had been sorted. He didn't want to hear the wrath of Tony when he found out that Peter had approached a dangerous situation without his suit, with no backup. It would be decidedly not good. He watched as Happy walked out of PR with Alex. They should probably call the police, but them turning up at Stark Towers would cause unnecessary publicity, the very thing he was trying to avoid when he was acting as CEO. No, this was the discreet method. He'd probably have to talk to them at some point to explain the whole story, but for the meantime he'd just get Friday to send the video and audio footage of the whole interaction, and that would probably sort it. In the meantime, Marcus would be busy starting to write the story and do research into him, which had to stop. He and the legal team would have to get together and write them a serious letter explaining the consequences of their actions. What was better, to let them do a story on him and get more money, and probably sue the company, or get the legal team to shut it down before the story was released? What would be better for Stark Industries? Obviously, it would be slander and defamation of character to release a series of articles about Tony like that, especially considering it was based on lies. Peter wasn't Tony's son, so that was a flaw for the daily media in any case, and as well as that, Peter was only officially interim director. Pepper was still CEO. Young Boss was in place for emergencies. Well, anyways, he could get into all of that with the legal team. They knew better about all that stuff anyways. And he'd definitely want to give Kai a bonus for tipping him off on that one. If he hadn't told Peter all about the problem in PR, they probably wouldn't have known who the leaks were coming from for forever. Alex probably could have stayed as Jamie for a good while longer before leaving with her big tell-all story. Peter called the police and got an officer who was a friend of Spider-Man to go and pretty much spy on Marcus for a bit. Officer Stacy was too happy to help. Obviously, Marcus couldn't be arrested for planning to do an expose on Tony. Defamation wasn't a criminal offense, more of a civil one. He would need to do some research into Marcus and Alex as well before the legal team started on whatever actions they decided they would take. This whole scenario wasn't the first time they'd done something nefarious. It certainly hadn't sounded like that in any case. Alex could be arrested, though, for attempted murder of Peter. At least that's what Officer Stacy said, which kinda sucked because Peter didn't like ruining people's lives, but she was clearly not a great person, so she probably deserved to be put behind bars. He made a mental note to get Friday to send the files down to the station and also send a copy to the legal team. Wow, this was going to give him a serious headache. When he got off the phone with Officer Stacy, he turned back to the employees of public relations, king of having forgotten that he wasn't alone. They were all staring at him with wide eyes, mouths gaping. Okay, so it hadn't exactly been a normal day, but hey! He couldn't help it if one of their senior employees of the department was actually a member of a secret plot to ruin Tony's life. That's kind of like a normal day for Spider-Man, but it probably shouldn't be for Peter Parker. He should probably be freaking out right now. The employees are currently seeing a 17-year-old kid who nearly got killed react perfectly calmly to the situation, and who is also their boss. He could understand the weirdness. Also, he'd interrupted their day. He looked at them all and winced. Sorry? I think he might have to get a new deputy. He glanced at Mrs. Roberts, whose face had contorted into something he couldn't quite describe, a mixture of confusion, worry, and extreme concern. I'll, leave. Please leave Jamie's office alone. A police officer might have to look at it. If there's any problems, let me know. Sorry again. Mr. Parker, that was incredible. One of the employees clearly managed to break out of their sheer shock of the whole situation, and the rest of the employees nod along with them. Several of them started clapping, which set off other noises. Soon the entire room was filled with clapping noises. Even Mrs. Roberts was clapping. Peter winced, the loud noise hurting his ears. "No, really, it's nothing. I gotta go." Wow, okay. He hadn't planned on bringing Spider-Man into Stark Industries today, but apparently his Parker luck followed him everywhere, even work. Hopefully nothing like that would happen for the rest of the day. Or ever. His phone buzzed. Shit, Tony. He was calling. Okay, Peter had to act normal. He couldn't stress Tony up by telling him, okay. Peter breathed out. Operation Don't Tell Tony was a go. "Hey, Mr. Stark." "Hey, kid, I just wanted to—" Tony paused to cough. "Check in with you. See how your day's going." "It's all good, thank you. I'm doing a tour of the building and going to check up on the marketing department now. How are you doing?" Peter wasn't really lying, just avoiding the truth. That was something teenagers did, right? Avoid the truth? "Oh, that sounds great. I'm stuck in bed, wasting away. My genius is flowing away from me as we speak," Tony dramatized before turning real. "But seriously, kid, I'm bored. Give me something, anything I can do for you, to make your day easier." Peter scanned through the list of things he'd already done today. Honestly, he probably had it all sorted. There wasn't anything Tony could do, and if Peter told him about the incident with Alex, he would probably storm straight to the Daily Media headquarters to kick up a fuss with Marcus. Peter didn't want that. It would only stress him out, and he didn't need that when he was ill, and even worse, it would make Pepper angry, and no one wanted to see Pepper when she was angry. "Mr. Stark, Pepper is right. You need to rest. That's the only thing that'll make you better. If I get time this evening, I'll swing by and we can chat about science and Mark 64, but for now, you need to just stay there and do nothing." He didn't think he could actually speak to Tony face-to-face, because the man was able to tell when he was lying. Pretty much everyone could tell when he was lying, to be honest. He didn't have the best poker face. Peter would probably just claim he was tired to avoid it. "But Pete, that's so boring." Peter smiled just a little. "I'll get someone to drop off a repulsor if you want, but I'm not sure the security will pass it through." At least then Tony could fiddle with something, even if it was trivial. "Nah, it's okay, kid. I'll speak to you later, yeah?" "Maybe." Peter regretted saying he would hang out with Mr. Stark. He loved Tony, of course. But being around the man after he'd been cooped up in a hospital day for 2 days was not a course of action he wanted to take. "I might be too tired, and I think New York needs their friendly neighborhood hero back for a bit." "Pete, if you're exhausted, then don't overwork yourself. I think May and I would prefer if you get some rest before Spider-Manning." "Tony, I'm actually fine, genuinely fine. Just wondering how I will be after the afternoon." Peter felt okay, but he never was good at estimating his own well-being. "Speaking of your wellness, Lisa told me you forgot to have lunch last time. I know I do it a lot, but that's no excuse for you to follow my lead. Have you had lunch today?" "Shit, I forgot." Peter swore. How did he always forget to have lunch? May would kill him. "Go and get your sandwich, kiddo. If I don't see you today, it will be tomorrow, yeah?" Pepper said she might not be taking calls and be online in time for tomorrow, so I'll be back in business. We both agreed. "No," Peter interjected. "Tony, I'll do it. Honestly, I'm on a roll today. Getting lots of stuff done that I won't be able to finish all in one day. Don't stress yourself out." Okay, so he was looking out for his mentor's wellness, but it was also slightly selfish. It'd be poor practice to start a bunch of projects and then leave them to his colleague to finish. "Oh." Tony sounded surprised, probably because Peter had never been that enthusiastic about being step-in CEO. "Well, I look forward to hearing about what you're up to when I see you next." "Rest," Peter said sternly, then hung up. Stark Industries' cafeteria was pretty much empty when he arrived. It was 2 o'clock again. How did this always happen when he was working, forgetting to eat lunch? God, it made him grateful for the school routine he was used to. And he wanted his sandwich. Mr. Delmar's son made it for him with a smile. This time, chicken sandwich and a French baguette with a variety of salad, vegetables, and some barbecue sauce. There was nothing Peter liked more than barbecue sauce on his sandwiches, and most foods. He cast his eyes over the cafeteria. There was only one table of a couple employees, and then a woman sat on the other side of the room by herself, working on a computer. The group of interns waved him over to sit with them, Jasper included. Peter went over and made small talk, explaining how his day had been so far, leaving out the attempted murder. They chatted a bit about their projects, and Peter found his eyes drifting to the other side of the room. He saw the lone employee now had her head in her hands, seemingly deeply frustrated if not upset. Peter immediately abandoned his sandwich on the table, trying not to think about how much bacteria was probably collected there from all of the Stark employees eating. He crossed the room to the lone employee, whose name badge read, Mary, Marketing and Finance. The paths had never crossed. Hey, it's okay," Peter reassured, tapping the employee on the shoulder. She looked up at him, a cacophony of tears. "I'm okay, she sniffed. "I don't need help, but I'm okay." Peter sat down. "No, you're not. What's bothering you?" "I don't need to bother you with my problems." Oh, wow, defensive. Clearly doesn't like talking about her problems, but is absolutely going through something. You do, actually. I'm doing this tour of the building, seeing if anything has any problems when working here, Peter explained. I haven't, visited marketing and financing yet, so that might be why you haven't seen me. I'm the CEO for today. Pepper and Tony are busy, so I thought I'd use my time to do something worthwhile. What's your issue? Is it to do with work? No, it's not work-related. It's, personal. Mary paused, tears still rolling down her face. I think I just need to talk to someone. I have a lot going on right now. Well, you can always talk to me, but if you mean you'd prefer to talk to someone professional, I'm friends with a great therapist who could put you in contact with some of his colleagues. Peter mentally told himself to text Sam about getting Mary a therapist. Wow, his mental list was getting longer and longer. Hire Ned to work in the IT department, arrange a fair for future intern prospects, sort out the PR issues, send all the PR employees gift baskets of chocolate so they aren't traumatized, get this employee a therapist, etc., etc. Even with the insurance I get from here, I don't think that would cover a private therapist, and I'm very grateful for it. Mr. Stark, it still took Peter by surprise, even though he knew lots of people thought he and Tony were related. He was still trying to wrap his head around literal Captain America, thinking he was Tony's son. He was probably blushing. It always made him really embarrassed when he was compared to Mrs. Stark. He went to correct her. Oh, I'm not a Stark, Mary. Oh, I apologize, sorry. I just assumed you were related to Tony Stark with you, being in charge and all. I thought it might be someone they were related to, and you guys seem, quite similar. Apologies. She seemed sheepish with the admission. No, it's okay, I don't mind. I'm Peter Parker, but you just call me Peter, really. And please, go on with what you were saying. Stark Industries gives an amazing employee medical package, of course, but the price for anything to do with mental health is insanity. My brother tried to get help from the system, and he was put on a wait list for 6 months. It's awful. Peter thought it through. He knew the American healthcare system was absolute shit. And he'd known that Stark employees got a pretty good employee package, but he'd never been in the position of struggling with mental health. May was pretty healthy, and Ben had been too, due to good lifestyle and diet. Peter, of course, had the advanced healing, and anytime he had an injury, he came to Stark Tower. Their medical facilities understood his fast healing rate, and he got quick and necessary medical care. Obviously, he couldn't open up the Avengers medroom to the public, not even his favorite employees, but there must be something he could do to support Mary, and then an idea formed. Mary, I do believe I've just had a brainwave. Do you think if Stark Industries hired a private therapist to come and talk to employees free of charge, that would help? Surely it would, giving employees a space to talk to someone external, someone free. Absolutely. I know I'm struggling, so there must be others here who are as well. A lot of the employees are college graduates, Peter. I can tell you for certain that a lot of people are facing difficult times. Even an hour with a therapist would be more than helpful. Peter had another thought. And if there was a room you could go, not only to talk to a therapist, but just like a comfort room full of sofas and comforting things to do, take your mind off of things. If it gets too much, would that help too, do you think? When I'm going through a hard time, sometimes I'd prefer to be left alone and just do something to take my mind off things, instead of talking through it. Of course, that would be incredible. Do you think it would happen? Mary asked. I'm going to get started with it as soon as possible. Thank you, Mary. This has been most enlightening. If you need anything at all, drop me an email, okay? It's on the system, peterparker@starkindustries.org. I'll respond as soon as I can. Thank you for stopping to check on me. Most people would just walk past me and go on with their day. It's no problem. Peter meant it. This was the whole point of his day, to solve problems. This was a problem he could solve, and he thought of an apt solution. I can see why they chose you, Mary smiled. Mrs. Potts and Mr. Stark. You might be young, but you're probably the smartest person here, and I'm not talking about your projects. Peter smiled and scratched the back of his neck. I'll see you around. He never could handle compliments. After the whole conversation, he'd pretty much wasted the time he'd had allotted for his lunch break. But he ran back over to the intern table to grab what was left of his sandwich. Time to get back to work. He jumped onto the elevator to go up to marketing and finance, hoping to move on from the incident in PR. Hopefully it would be kept quiet and the PR team would have it kept all to themselves. The interns at the table hadn't known after all. He was wrong. When Peter arrived at marketing and finance, everyone turned to stare at him with awe and concern. Shit, they knew. Somehow, they knew already. Of course, it could just be that they were collectively in awe that the boss had come to see them. Peter had never even stepped foot in marketing and finance. They'd been in meetings with some of the team, but they'd been in meeting rooms at the top of the tower, but their faces, something was definitely up. Oh, hi guys. I'm just doing a tour of the building today, just here to check everything out. Some of the team nodded, and lots of small communal meetings, probably people tailing off their lunch breaks, scattered back to their desks. Oh, Peter thought, they think I'm telling them off for not working. He scratched the back of his neck and wandered around. The room had gone quiet, everyone furiously typing. Peter felt bad. He hadn't wanted to intimidate, really. He wondered whether this had been the same for the other departments he'd gone in. Had he been unwelcome? Had he made them feel uncomfortable, unproductive? He hoped not. He approached one of the individuals, Mr. Parker. The man pushed his glasses up his nose bridge. How are you? I'm doing alright. How about you? How are you doing? Peter glanced at his name badge. Lucas. Lucas's voice raised by an octave. Oh, okay. Thank you. We heard about the incident. Ah, of course. I should have known things would travel fast in a tower this big. Well, as long as there's no one else really to pull a gun on me, then we're all fine. Peter chuckles. Lucas gave a nervous chuckle. How is the marketing department doing now, Lucas? Peter said, balancing on Lucas's desk. He scanned the desk, seeing several files open, also a Rubik's Cube that was unsolved. Do you mind if I... Peter gestured to the cube. Lucas nodded for him to take it. Unsolved Rubik's Cubes drove him insane. He felt a compulsive need to solve them. Peter fiddled for about 30 seconds and then placed it back on the desk, solved. Lucas stared at him. Oh, I'm not... You probably don't want to ask me about the department. I'm just one of the team, not a higher-up. Mark is in there. Lucas pointed to the office down at the end of the floor, reading Head of Marketing Department, Marcus Russell. Ah yes, Mark, the head of the department. When Pepper had informed him that the new head of the marketing department was called Mark, Peter had to hold back a grin. Apparently Tony had laughed his face off, having to actually lean on the wall to recover. Mark. Marketing. Pepper had not been so amused. I'll talk to him later, but I prefer to get a more honest description. I found higher-ups problematic at that. I'm sure you can understand that they want to impress me and then go on with their day. You look like the kind of guy to tell the truth. Peter chuckled. Mr. Parker, if I may. Lucas handed Peter the file on the household robot that Peter was struggling to produce. As a result of the tricky equation he scribbled earlier that morning on his physics test, we think it needs a name to make the bot seem more human. I know it's a work in progress and they're having trouble with it, but you, often have quick breakthroughs, so we like to get the campaign ready for products early, for when it gets released. That way we're on top of things, and the way other companies market robots like these, well, they like to have names. Peter was surprised he hadn't thought of it himself. It had, in fact, been Tony's idea to produce a robot for household use, and Tony had showcased several of his bots for the interns to see, to use as inspiration, but not for copying. Dummy had not appreciated being removed from the lab, although he did like the extra attention as the interns marveled at Tony's favorite mechanical companion. They hadn't been told the names, of course, which was something Tony had kept private. It was quintessentially Tony to name his mechanical creation. Peter thought about the bots in the lab, now numerous and all equally unhelpful as Dummy, but so endearing. He clearly had a thing about names. Anything Tony made, he slapped a name on it, even if it had only the most basic of functions. His AIs, too. They all had names: Jarvis, Friday, Karen. When Peter had made some drones for Spider-Man, just little spider-shaped ones, Tony had insisted he named them. It made him smile just to think about how personal the lab was, and how only a close circle of people knew just how attached Tony could get to things. Yeah, Tony would like the bots to have names. Yeah, Peter nodded. That's a good idea. I presume you and your team have compiled some suggestions. Lucas passed one of the sheets from the file. You don't have to use any of them. We were just spitballing. Right. Peter scanned the list, not planning on making any decisions. If it's okay, I think I'll take this up to the interns and let them have a think. They're all quite attached to the bot after spending all that time with him. Perfect. Get Isaac to let me know. Isaac was the guy in charge of the bot production, who had requested Peter's help for the equation after I'd stumped the whole team. Peter had chosen Isaac for the project because Isaac was cool, and had the same personal love that Tony had for the bots like these. Isaac probably already had a name for the bot. It wouldn't be fair for Peter to just choose one without at least consulting him. Peter left Lucas and then went to check on Mark from marketing, who had nothing except glowing reports to give him. Several of the employees thanked and congratulated him on finding such a dangerous employee hidden amongst the ranks of public relations, who of course worked closely with marketing and finance teams. Which personally Peter thought was a little odd, but hey, he didn't have a conception of what was normal and what was dangerous anymore, not after swinging around as Spider-Man for the last couple of years. After marketing, the sun had started to set and the working day came to an end. So he went back up to his office, mainly filled with junk. His eyes glanced over the array of suits, and of course, the several backup Spider-Man suits he kept locked up in a cupboard, just in case. There were drawers full of web fluid in there, all sorts of varieties. It was best to keep them in the office rather than in Tony's lab, which tended to get exploded quite regularly. At least if he kept them in his office, he actually still had a supply of web fluid rather than having to replace it all when the lab blew up. He sat at the desk and asked Friday to put him on Do Not Disturb. Peter had the entirety of tomorrow to get all of the things he had promised various employees to be done, so it was time to review the day. Okay, intern fair. Make sure Jamie Andrews is taken off the Stark Industries register. Follow up with the police and the legal team about the whole situation. The comfort room, find a location and a therapist willing to take the job. Find what a normal therapist's annual wage is and double it. Stark way of doing things. And of course, if you had time, complete the tour. He ticked IT, security, maintenance, HR, PR, marketing, and finance off the list. That left the legal department, research and development, and of course assembly and production. He should also probably call into London and Hong Kong branches, ensure everything was running smoothly with all the heads there. With all of that in mind and Friday there to help, Peter began to plan his day. It took some work and some rearranging of plans, and as well as shortening his lunch break significantly, but if he did a full day shift, he could get pretty much everything he needed to be done. Peter did a bit more work, including what was quite an important phone call, and then extricated himself from the office. He made the executive decision to stay the night at the tower, and informed May that he wouldn't be home. Then he cooked himself some pasta, and almost burnt himself on the stovetop somehow, and thought about sending Tony a text. But he knew that would mean that the man would just call him, and he didn't want to talk to the genius. It would only be extending the lies, and Peter had said that if he was tired, then he wouldn't come and visit, and it had been a maybe at best anyways. But Peter wasn't tired. He'd settled down for a quiet evening in, and had been tossing and turning for about half an hour before he decided it wasn't cutting it. Sometimes he needed the rush of adrenaline that a late night as Spider-Man brought him, in order so he could crash later on. And hell, it was a bad idea. Friday and him had calculated how early he'd need to wake up, but he just couldn't sleep. His mind just kept going back to swarming ideas of Tony being disappointed in him for not doing enough. With the time he had as CEO, he knew Pepper probably would have been more productive, meeting with clients. Peter could have arranged calls with the UN, the government, or talked about the recent partnership with PemTech for some of the projects, but he hadn't wanted to. He'd done what he'd wanted, and spending time mulling it over in bed wasn't working well. He was going to start second-guessing all of his decisions. There were many buildings that were his favorite to swing off of, but Stark Tower had been one of the best ones. The adrenaline as he swung without knowing exactly where the web would land, that split second of danger, was worth the dizzying feeling he got from being so high up. He spent 4 hours swinging in New York, helping the little guy. He'd actually managed to take care of a situation he'd been eyeing for weeks. A crime family, the Romanos, who were part of the mob. They'd been in hiding ever since he gave them a scare a couple of weeks ago, but Peter had taken a week off of his nightly patrols to see if that encouraged them to return to the streets. Sure enough, his trackers on the family went dinging and Carrie notified him about an hour into the trip. Peter webbed them to a wall and avoided getting shot for the second time that evening. It felt easier when he was in the suit for some reason. Then he left the rest to the police, with a note in his scrawled handwriting saying, "Mob guys, FBI was a case on them. Ask for Mr. Marin when you contact them. He's in charge of it. Spider-Man." Peter had, after all, been keeping an eye on it. It hadn't taken much to find out who the FBI operative had been that had been watching them the same way he had been for weeks. The FBI website had been one of the easiest that he and Ned had cracked into, but that was a story for another time. He also stopped him mugging and even helped a couple of cats down from trees. But the best part of his trip had to be when one of the cats he'd saved snuggled into his lap as he sat on a branch. Someone even got a photo of it and put it on Twitter, which he forwarded to Ned and MJ when he was crawling into bed. Hell, it had been a hectic day. When he'd arrived at the tower, he'd assumed it'd be a chill day, checking up on all the departments, not unmasking a corrupt employee and deciding to build a new room. But he'd enjoyed it, more so than he'd thought. Even though most people would consider it to be pretty awful and traumatizing, ignoring the whole situation, he'd thought he had made a lot of progress. Tomorrow, he could get cracking on new ideas he had for the company. Alright guys, and that is the end of Chapter 2 of the Heir to Stark Industries by Only Forward. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'll see you next chapter.